Get out! You're no daughter of mine! The one yelling at me with such force that spit flies is my mother. Her face is beet red as she screams, both her hands gripping a knife, its tip pointed at me. You're just a leech who won't even provide for living expenses. Contrary to her claims, I contribute over $3,000 a month to the household, which is more than half of my income. She knows this. I've explained it numerous times, but nothing seems to get through to her now. I've seen her angry before, unwilling to listen, but I never imagined she'd resort to wielding a knife. My priority now is to not get hurt, to not provoke her further, and to gently put some distance between us. Her cold voice reaches me. I wish I never had a parasite like you. I'm Camilla, 29 years old. Thanks to my hard work, I now work as a systems engineer at a well-known major corporation. My journey to this job began with my father's influence. He always loved tinkering with computers. As a child, he was fascinated by machines, and the first time he saw a computer, he was profoundly moved. Back then, I was excited, but the latest computers are amazing. Look, see how thin this one is? Yet the screen is so clear. Smiling, he used to take me, then a young elementary student, to electronics stores. He would show me the latest computer models, explaining what made them special. Watching him happily engaging with computers sparked my own interest. My father, usually a man of few words, would enthusiastically teach me about computers. Eventually, I realized I was more adept at using computers than my peers, leading me to dive deeper into my studies and enroll in a college of science and engineering. During my job search, I naturally gravitated towards a career related to computers. Now I work as a systems engineer at my current company, primarily doing remote work. I enjoy my job and have achieved significant results among my peers. Visiting my parents' house occasionally and talking about work with my father has always been a highlight. Then, one day, my father collapsed. I received a call from my mother and rushed to the hospital. Is Dad okay? He suddenly collapsed, and I immediately called for an ambulance. They ran tests at the hospital, and it seems like a subarachnoid hemorrhage. They said urgent surgery is needed. He's in the operating room right now. I'm worried about what will happen to our lives now. Oh no, Dad. I waited, praying for my family's safety. Hours later, the doctor came out of the operating room to inform us. The surgery was successful, but there might be lasting effects on his limbs. I was just relieved that his life was saved. I felt a momentary relief. My mother said beside me, What are you going to do about work now? I'm worried whether you can work properly. Without an income, how am I supposed to live? She was concerned about her own future. It was always like this. My mother always putting herself first before the family. Seeing her like this made me feel even sadder. During his hospitalization, I visited my dad several times. As the doctor said, he had difficulty moving his arms and legs. He tried hard in rehabilitation before discharge, but it seemed some after effects would remain. During his stay, my mother would bring only the bare necessities to the hospital and leave quickly. Dad decided to take early retirement, as commuting to his current job was too challenging in his condition. Living alone was also difficult for him, requiring care, so I discussed this with my mother. Dad can't live alone in his condition, so I hope you can help, Mom. But I wasn't expecting much from her response. I'm too busy with my own things to care for your father. Her words came out instantly, leaving me disappointed. My mother never prioritized family since I was young, always putting herself first. I believe she loved my father, so I thought she would lend a hand to him in his current state. Yet she refused my request for help. I understand. Then I'll move in and take care of Dad myself. That would be a big help. When can you start? Since my job was mostly remote, I could manage both work and caregiving. as long as I had a computer and an environment suitable for online meetings. Knowing it would be a busy life, juggling work and caregiving, I decided to return home and live with my parents. The day I moved back while packing my things, my mother approached me. "About meals, make sure breakfast is ready by 7 a.m. It'd be good to have grilled fish, natto, or salad, considering health. And keep the trash in small bags so it doesn't smell. Remember to take out the burnable trash on Mondays and Thursdays. And do the cleaning every day. Ah, it's so good you're back." Though she initially said she could take care of herself, my mother quickly changed her attitude and began pushing all household chores onto me. Despite her complaints, I noticed the house was dirty. It seems she never did much housework. As expected, I ended up doing all the housework alone, with my mother not lifting a finger. Moreover, she was often out, living freely as she pleased. My days became incredibly busy with work, caregiving, and now all the household chores. My father, who had lost some weight, apologized. "I'm sorry for causing trouble. You have to work, too." I shook my head slowly, smiling. "Don't apologize, Dad. It's not your fault. I'm glad I came back home. I enjoy talking with you." Hearing this, he seemed slightly relieved. Caring for my father didn't mean he was bedridden or couldn't eat by himself. It was just lending a hand here and there, not too difficult, and I was happy to spend time with him like when I was a child. Meanwhile, my mother, who does nothing, never hesitates to complain. "Camilla, your cooking is kind of bland and simple, isn't it? Isn't it insufficient for Dad's nutrition? For a sick person like him, shouldn't you increase the variety of dishes? What an unfilial daughter." She says this while gobbling up my cooking, which really irks me. However, mentioning Dad made me think seriously. Given his age, he doesn't eat much, but perhaps having more small dishes rather than large ones would be easier for him to eat. Thinking this, I increased the variety, but Mom didn't comment. Instead, a few days later, she said, "There are too many dishes lately. We're old and can't eat so much. Don't you know how to save, even though you've been living alone?" She said this while finishing her meal, so I couldn't help but retort. "You're the one who told me to increase the number of dishes. I did it so Dad wouldn't get tired of the same food, and to stimulate his appetite." Mom then sighed loudly and stood up. "What's with that tone? It's like you're doing it reluctantly because I complained. How ungrateful. It's your attitude, taking every little suggestion as a complaint. That's why you're still unmarried." Expressing her anger with her entire body, she stomped towards the sofa in front of the TV. Of course, she left her dishes on the table. Plopping down on the sofa. "Coffee!" She looked at me and barked. As if I would serve her, while I was clearing the table, she threw a cushion at me from the sofa. "Hey, make the coffee already. You're almost always at home, and you don't even go to work. You talk about caring for Dad. But aren't you just after his retirement money? And you can't even do housework properly. You're so unreasonable." This again? I've switched to remote work, remember? I'm in meetings and working, even when I'm in my room. No matter how I explained, Mom refused to understand remote work. In her mind, I was the daughter who returned home under the guise of caregiving, not contributing to the household expenses and bringing misfortune. It baffles me how Mom thought I was using Dad's retirement money for myself, when I was the only one actually caring for him. In reality, I was the one caring for Dad, earning for our parents' living expenses, and doing all the housework. I've been dealing with Mom's whims since childhood, but I've reached my limit. It's unfortunate for Dad, but I can't live with the three of us under one roof. A few days after making this decision, I accompanied Dad to his rehabilitation. He was motivated, and though dramatic improvement was unlikely, we were preventing further decline. As the doctor encouraged us to keep going, we returned home to see Mom leaving the house hastily with a large bag. It was normal for her to be out often and to come back from department stores with big bags, so I didn't think much of it. However, the next day, when I went to go shopping and opened my closet, I realized all my precious bags and accessories were gone. What? Why? They weren't something I wore often, nor had I moved them, so they should be here. Then I remembered Mom's hurried departure the day before and confronted her. Mom, did you go into my room yesterday? Why are you asking all of a sudden? This is my house, and I can go into any room I want. Then what's in that bag? Mom was holding a bag from a high-end brand. It was clearly something she had just bought. So you somehow had the money to buy such a brand item? You're always telling me not to waste money. Well, you waste money, so I thought I'd get some assurance from you. I frowned, not understanding her words, and she started laughing cheerfully. You had some nice bags. Even just the bags and accessories sold for a good amount. Shockingly, my mother had sold my accessories without my permission and used the money for her own interests. I couldn't contain my anger. I can't believe this. Stealing and then selling them? That's worse than a thief. Give them back. Compensate me, I yelled. Mom twisted her face. Unbelievable. A daughter talking back to her mother. When I was a child, I absolutely obeyed my parents. I worked and cared for my parents. I'm even taking care of your father. All you do is complain without doing anything. She shouted and slammed her fist on the table. Then why don't you help a little with Dad's care? Mom, do you remember ever caring for him since I came back? Have you prepared his clothes? Or helped him up from a chair? You don't even do that, and you say you're taking care of him? The one being cared for in this house is you. I slammed my hands on the table and glared at her. I knew my mother didn't get along with my paternal grandmother and might have faced harassment, but at least claiming to be caring for my father was something I couldn't accept. Dad had given up on expecting care from Mom. He tried engaging in small talk, bringing up TV shows or stories from friends he met during rehab, but whenever he started talking, she would quickly leave the room. Why could she confidently claim to be caring for him while doing nothing? While I was lost in thought, Mom stayed silent. Slowly lifting her hands from the table, she turned away without a word and walked towards the kitchen. I sighed, thinking she was escaping the conversation again, but she returned unexpectedly quickly. Approaching briskly, she was holding a knife in both hands. Mom? Her face was redder than I'd ever seen, shaking with anger as she yelled at me louder than ever before. Get out of this house! You're just a parasite living here for Dad's retirement money! At that moment, I realized none of my words had ever reached her. To her, no matter how much I cared for Dad or worked, I was nothing but a pest. I'll move out as soon as I find a new place. I slowly backed away, saying this while putting distance between us. Then I rushed to my room. I thought I wouldn't feel anything being rejected by such a distant mother, but tears wouldn't stop flowing. Not from sadness, but from intense anger. I immediately started to act. I began preparing to move out that day. A colleague at work had a friend in real estate, so I sought their help and cooperation. In my free time, I packed my belongings into boxes. Finding a new place didn't take long, thanks to my colleague's help. Once I was ready to move, I discussed it with my father. Dad, can we talk for a minute? What's up? I told my father everything, about how Mom had been treating me. That's terrible. I had a hunch about Mom's attitude, but since I've been a burden, I couldn't really say much. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Dad. I've been thinking too. When I was healthy, I was almost entirely burdened with the housework, like cleaning, laundry, and cooking. It was like I was a housekeeper, and she'd always ask for money, so I was struggling too. Dad continued. Even now, needing care, it's always you who helps, and Mom never tries to assist. I'm deeply disappointed with her. That's why, actually, I've been considering divorce. That must have been hard for you, Dad. No. Compared to what you've been through, Camilla, it's nothing. Thank you, really. I'm just glad I could come back home and be with you. That's what makes me happiest. I meant every word. I wanted to stay with my dad now and in the future. Dad, I have something to discuss. I had a plan in mind, aware of Dad's feelings towards Mom. I shared it with him. A few days later, we moved out while Mom was away. She always left on Wednesdays for her hula dance class and lunch with friends, returning at 3 p.m. We scheduled the movers for that Wednesday morning, a time when she was guaranteed to be out. As they loaded our belongings onto the truck, I felt a tinge of sadness about leaving this house. I got into a rented car, not alone, but with my dad. We had both agreed to leave Mom behind and live together. In the car, Dad said,
"Camilla, are you sure this is okay? You could have been freed from taking care of me."
"Don't say that, Dad. I want to live with you. That's my greatest happiness. Let's do our best together."
"Thank you."
The move was finished by early afternoon, and we sat in our new home eating sandwiches we'd bought. Sorry, it's just sandwiches today. We didn't have much time.
"It's nostalgic. I used to eat them often before you came back. I didn't have time to cook because of work. Mom always complained."
Dad laughed. The sandwiches tasted delicious as we chatted about trivial things. While we were settling in, the phone rang. It was Mom. I answered, putting it on speaker so Dad could hear. "Yes? Why have you both suddenly disappeared?" I could tell Mom was furious over the phone. "Why are both your and your dad's belongings gone?" "We decided to move out together after consulting. You did tell us to leave, right? Is there a problem? Now you don't have to worry about caregiving or living expenses." "What about my life with Dad? I'm relying on his retirement and pension. Where are you now?" "Why don't you take care of yourself? We're already in our new home. I won't say where, but we bought a high-rise apartment." "Huh? A high-rise apartment is for rich people, right? Stop joking. There's no way you guys could live there." Mom clearly didn't believe us, but it was true. We had moved to a high-rise apartment close to the hospital where Dad was receiving treatment. I think I've told you several times, but I've been continuously working. You always said it was just a little side job. Our company is quite large, and I've been there a long time, entrusted with significant responsibilities. You might not remember, but the $3,000 I've been depositing into the account every month, that was from me. Wait, that wasn't Dad's pension? I thought the balance was high because of his retirement money. Did Dad ever have an income that could give $3,000 a month? His retirement fund was gone the next month. I saw the card statements. It was all spent on brand bags by you. That's why I was supporting the family. I didn't know that. No one told me anything about it. Realizing explaining further was pointless, I continued. You didn't listen because you didn't want to. I've told you many times, and I heard from Dad. You've been going out to play with friends every day, even while Dad was still working. You complained every day about your oppressive husband because he managed the finances due to your extravagant spending. It's amazing that you only worry about money. Camilla, you knew all this and still tricked me. If you have that much money, come back home right now. To Mom, family was just a wallet. She never cared about Dad's condition, only about money. And yet, she was careless with bank accounts and thoughtlessly spent on credit cards without any problem. I was astounded at how she managed to live her life this way. Dad, tired of our endless conversation, took over. I thought you'd listen if it came from our daughter, but no. Thank you for everything. I won't interfere with whatever life you choose to lead. Let's divorce. Divorce? Wait. What about my life? You're free from caring for me now. You can live freely. I'll send the divorce papers later. Just sign them. She really could only think of herself. As I was stunned, Dad ended the call without saying anything more. I'm sorry, Camilla. I didn't mean to make you go through this. With just those words from my father. Thank you, Dad. I responded. The next day, we were scheduled to go to the hospital for Dad's appointment. I never imagined living somewhere so convenient. Thank you, Camilla. I wanted to make life easier for you, Dad. Plus, compared to New York's high rises, the prices here are much more reasonable. Looks like we can live comfortably. We left the house having that conversation. It took us about 10 minutes to reach the hospital. As the automatic doors opened, we were taken aback. Sitting near the entrance was my mother, apparently waiting for us since morning. Upon seeing us, she sprang up as if she'd been waiting just for this moment and approached us. "What was that call yesterday about? I knew nothing about your salary or you two moving out. I won't allow you two to live in a nice place without me." Suddenly, her hand reached out to grab me. "Let me live in the high-rise too." I remained calm despite her behavior, wondering how she could think such demands would be met. It became clear she had never considered our family, and I felt pity. "What Dad and I decided is final. Please give up. From now on, I won't think of you as my mother. Thank you for everything until now, but let me live my own life from here." "I won't allow it." "I don't need your permission. Let go of me. This is a hospital. If you continue, I'll call the police." Mom regained some composure and looked around for the first time. Other patients were staring at us, and hospital staff, accompanied by a security guard, were approaching. Hastily, Mom let go of me. "Is everything okay?" Without looking at the person who asked, Mom hurriedly left. I apologized for the disturbance. That was my mother. We had a little disagreement. As I looked towards the hospital entrance, I saw my mother's back, seemingly more frail than usual. In the following days, she lingered around the hospital searching for us, but she only acted boldly towards those she perceived as weaker than herself. After being chased away by security and scolded by other patients, she never showed up again. That was the last time I saw her. Later, Dad consulted a lawyer and decided to pursue divorce seriously. Mom resisted the divorce until the end, even demanding compensation. Once the lawyer explained she wasn't entitled to any, she unsuccessfully tried to plead with him. The lawyer coolly referred her to community support centers, proceeding with the paperwork. The divorce was finalized a few months after the incident at the hospital. Dad decided to sell the family home, which he no longer needed. Mom opposed this until she realized she would receive money from the sale, even after the divorce. Her sudden agreement seemed so unlike the mother I knew. Until the end, she remained obsessed with money, leaving us both sighing in disbelief. After Dad sold the family home, we've been enjoying a peaceful life. I've been busy as usual with work, housekeeping, and caregiving, but the care services are much more comprehensive in this area. I've been able to hire a daytime helper and increasingly attend the office. Dad's condition has been slowly progressing, partly due to age. The doctor suggested we consider a care facility, so we're mulling over our options. Just when I got used to this new life, an unknown number called me. Thinking it might be work-related, I answered, only to hear Mom's voice. "Camilla, I've almost run out of savings." It's only been a few months since she received the money from selling the house, and already her savings were depleting. "So give me some money. Think of it as your final act of filial piety." "I don't have any money to give you anymore. Dad and I are living happily together. Can you please not disturb us anymore?" "How dare you call me a disturbance? I'm your mother. You should be grateful and give me some money. Isn't that what working for a good company is for? Show some gratitude to your mother." "I won't contact you anymore." Exhausted from arguing, I hung up, and then blocked her number. Nevertheless, she kept calling from different numbers. My mother, initially aware of the call blocking feature, must have realized that calling from a different phone would connect her through. I kept blocking each new number she called from, but it was a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. Eventually, I changed my number, which finally stopped her calls. Later, through mutual acquaintances, Dad heard about Mom. After running out of savings, she was living in an old apartment in the suburbs, barely making ends meet with a part-time job, with no money for hobbies, She was somehow managing to live alone.
Maybe she's finally learning to live like a person,
Dad said.
I suppose it might be because I've been indulging her.
I muttered softly, sighing deeply as I spoke to Dad. Dad, are you happy now? Dad smiled at me and said,
Of course, Camilla. Thank you. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused.